listening to Driving Law, a podcast by Kyla about all things related to the rules of the road.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Driving Law. I'm Kyla at Acumen Law, and with me, my co-host, Paul Doroshenko.
I can see you're in your living room, Kyla.
I am in my living room. If people are wondering about the background behind me, this is what I live in.
Yeah.
And I can see you're in the void, the blurry void.
I'm in my living room. Friday morning, I'm in my living room. I have a medical appointment today. I've got a bunch of things that I need to do, but I decided I was going to conduct my first hearing at home from my living room, and it was successful. So I anticipate a revocation. We will see. But it's lovely because the birds are like, it's just bird fantastic out there. Through my hearing, I would glance out and see the hummingbirds that are hovering around above a bush that my neighbor has a feeder, and it made me feel good about the world.
Good. I'm glad. That makes me happy. Oh, I've zoomed out. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about this week. It's been a crazy week for driving law. Just like driving law weeks after driving law weeks. I very much enjoy it.
You kept sending me all sorts of cases and decisions, and I mean, I don't know what you've decided is the most interesting one. I think it was lots of driving law stuff. I was on Mike Smith's show. We talked about two issues. I forget the second one now escapes me, but it will likely be published on our website today.
Nice. Well, yeah, you talked about one of the interesting things. I'd never heard that this was happening about car headlights.
Yeah, so car headlights have, in the last few years, have switched to LED from halogen. And halogen were pretty damn bright when they came out compared to the old incandescent lights. And, you and I share some commonalities. We both like oldies music, certain oldies music. And we both, I like the old cars. And you like some old cars too, although you drive a more modern car than I do. Actually, no, I guess our cars are like, my truck is the same year as your car.
Mm-hmm.
Any event, you own a classic car. I own a classic car. So I don't really think about these new headlights and these things. But this summer, as I was driving around in our Ford Transit van that we own for our distillery, headlights shining in my eyes at night. And I'm thinking to myself, am I going crazy? Am I just old? What is the issue? Do I have cataracts? What's causing this blindness? Like, I feel like I'm driving into 10,000 suns, like it's a supernova every time I come around a corner. And then there's these cars with lights that go shining off into the ditch, and they're driving down the highway at me. And apparently, cars have had LED lights now installed in them, and they are much brighter. They are bluer. They are harder on the eyes. And a lot of people are starting to complain about it. And people in our civic government here in Vancouver are like, somebody's got to take action.
Well, it's a real problem here in Vancouver because we have, the stupidest amount of rain. And when you have rainy, dark, wet roads and those goddamn bright lights, you can't see the road lines. You can't see
Flaring off the road.
Yeah,
Can't see people except a hopeful shadow.
at night when I'm driving home, if it's dark and raining, I'm just hoping for the best. I'm probably in my lane, but I'm not sure because I can't see it.
Well, at that moment, that other vehicle's coming at you. All you're counting on is that they're in their lane and you're staying relative.
Yep.
And I think of, you and I dealt with a highway collision case this year where people were coming around a corner, and you're trying to guess where you are in the lane when the road is completely covered in snow, and you're trying to anticipate where that other vehicle is. On the highway this year, when I've been driving at nighttime in our transit van or even in my pickup truck, I'm trying to figure out where I am relative to the vehicle coming at me to ensure that I'm in my lane. Like, okay, hoping.
Yeah.
Last night I was driving home in the rain. It's light from the headlights is reflecting off the street. It's reflecting, it's coming into my car. It's brightening my whole inside of my vehicle. And I cannot see pedestrians dressed in black, dressed in dark colors, crossing the street. And people courageously cross the street like you like you're going to see them. Like,
Hope for that easy settlement.
Well, and there's no ICBC settlement. So I'm to the point where I'm driving, like, half the time I'm driving 30 kilometers an hour, which in our neighborhood around our office right now is all you can do anyway, because the city has closed a block of Broadway. Broadway, for anybody who hasn't been to Vancouver, is a wide road. It's broad. It was designed to be Broadway, to be a big road for forever. And of course, it's got 4 lanes of traffic on it. And it is such an important arterial roadway in BC to get to the 40,000 people who are up at UBC, go down Broadway from you can take the 99 or whatever bus down there. Huge bus route, very busy traffic route. It's also the route under which they are building the subway tunnel. And there is a section of subway where the station's going to be at Main and Broadway, which is so close to our office, which will be great for us when it's open for staff and people to get to our office. Like, I'm going to probably start taking the train myself.
We'll no longer have parking problems.
We won't have parking problems anymore. But right now they've closed Broadway for this one block, and they are trying to transfer the traffic onto 8th, which runs parallel to it. Our office is on 7th. And so half the traffic, people are turning illegally off Main Street onto 6th. That spot where you're not allowed to turn left. Then can't turn onto 7 off, I'm sorry, not Main Street. Yeah, it is Main Street. And then there's all this traffic is coming down 7th because people are turning off on Kingsway because they're redirected down they are directed off there unless they're a bus.
Yeah.
And if you're just a vehicle coming down Main Street, you can't turn left onto 7th. Anyway, the entire neighborhood is just clogged, and this is supposed to last 4 months while they remove the temporary bridge they had put in to cover the roadway as they built underneath the train station.
Yeah. 4 months of terrible traffic in the wettest months.
Yep.
In the dark with bright headlights.
So the bright headlights issue, I mean, it's a federal government issue.
Yeah. But it's also like, finally, the city of Vancouver is actually dealing with a public safety issue that is a real public safety issue and not just a bunch of made up police nonsense.
Yeah, but interestingly, like, the police don't do any testing of headlights that I've ever seen. In my career, I don't think I've ever seen anybody sent in with a notice and order to go and get their vehicle inspected for headlights.
No, the only time I've ever seen it is when, like, people install unnecessary lamps on their vehicle.
Yeah, but
Or I've seen people pulled over for having their brights on or their fog lights on when they're not supposed to.
you can adjust I've never seen anybody pulled over for that. I wish they would be, but you can adjust your headlights on most older cars to set how far they shoot down the road. And mechanics who should be trained on adjusting headlights, you get it in your shop, you've got a spot on your door and a distance and you figure it out. But I don't know that you can do that with these new vehicles. I would think that, there's no need for that anymore. It should be properly adjusted right from the start. But I don't know that would fix it because it's the blueness and intensity of it, not necessarily how high they are pointing.
Yeah.
But
All right.
significant issue. I'm glad people are talking about it, but it's going to require the federal government, and then they'd have to give tools to police to do something. And right now, like, we don't have the tools for noise.
But they removed the noise, like, specific decibel provisions. So now it's just the officer's subjective assessment.
Well, I know. In other words, they don't have the tools for noise. My officer's subjective assessment of your headlights. You can see if there's extra lights. That's different. They don't have the tools really for tint. I mean, if they see any tint on there, they'll deal with it. But it's not like, I don't know. It just feels like there's a few things that we need a measurement for. And I look at I was writing a blog post this week about how over 08 is, you're measuring your breath is never measuring your blood, and it's based on an average, and we never know what anybody's blood alcohol concentration is because you're never that point. And I was just thinking about, well, at least we do have a system. It's not, you got to be able to suss people out.
Yeah.
You pull them over, you got to be able to stop them from continuing to tool down the road.
Well, Well, we're on the subject of municipal governments.
Yeah.
Let's talk about parking tickets.
That was an interesting one, huh?
Yeah, so there is a case out of the Saskatchewan Court of King's Bench. So, not just the old provincial court, but an actual appellate level decision, Saskatchewan Court of King's Bench, where
Superior Court.
somebody was convicted under the bylaws for the city of Saskatoon for parking in a pay station zone longer than the amount of time purchased.
Yeah. And so it was a parking ticket. He hadn't purchased any time.
Yes. And why is it he hadn't purchased any time, Paul?
Well, he was driving an older vehicle that started leaking gas, pouring gas out. And so he couldn't continue to drive. Otherwise, that thing was going to burst into flames. So he pulled over on the side of the road, left his car there, arranged for a tow truck. Had already gone through those steps.
Yep.
Apparently, it stopped leaking when he turned it off. So it must have been fuel pump somewhere after that point. It wasn't back at the tank. So safe to sit there on the road. You didn't have to call the toxic hazardous waste people.
It was only like 7 or 8 minutes that it was there.
Yeah. Well, until he got the ticket.
Yes.
It was there for a while after that. But ultimately goes to court, lays all this out.
Mm-hmm.
And the JJP in court says, wow, that's pretty sympathetic. I get it. But, you broke the law. So I'm going to find you guilty. But I'm going to give you an absolute discharge. And I'm thinking to myself, can you do that? An absolute discharge on a parking ticket?
Yeah, I don't know.
So the prosecution was looking at it saying, can you do that? An absolute discharge on a parking ticket? And they figured you couldn't.
Yes, but the Saskatchewan Court of King's Bench was not going to let this poor man
Don't be deterred.
go guilty. The Saskatchewan Court of King's Bench said, yeah, maybe you can't get a defense or an absolute discharge, but you can raise a defense. And the defense of necessity was never considered by the Justice of the Peace on the parking ticket appeal. And so, therefore, I asked the Crown to tell me why this wasn't necessity. And the Crown really failed to say why it wasn't necessity.
Well, the Crown was sent out to come back and give a brief on necessity.
Yeah.
And the justice who got the brief back said the Crown did a very good job on this brief. It's again, nobody's here. There's the appeal was by the Crown. They must have notified the individual. He didn't come for the appeal. Didn't have to. I wouldn't either in these circumstances. And so the Crown did their duty and they gave a balanced approach to it. And according to the judge, and the research that was presented made out the defense of necessity based on the evidence that was had been presented at trial. So it was a necessity defense on a parking ticket. Now, I mean, it's not completely unusual, but it's rare that people are actually running the necessity defense for a parking ticket, but it is one that is available.
Yep.
And I think has been available before because your stolen vehicle is available. That's an issue of not your fault.
Yep.
Unfortunately in Vancouver, in order to be able to persuade the you've got these levels you have to go through before you'll even get a hearing. First, you have to persuade somebody who yells at you from the city of Vancouver when you phone them, and that you have to examine your photos before they will even talk to you and all of these things. But it is one of those things that, but you have to have the police file number. You must have reported it. If it was stolen by your grandson and you haven't reported it to the police, you don't have a defense. According to the city of Vancouver, but necessity is a defense.
Well, necessity is one of those things that, it's not a statutory defense, it's a common law defense. And as the Supreme Court of Canada describes in, the seminal case on necessity, it's not really even necessarily a defense because it's something that really goes to the heart of what our legal system is aimed at, which is not punishing people for acts that are truly involuntary.
But you and I have said this before. If you and I go on a hunting trip and we're drinking and I shoot myself in the leg, you're still going to drive me to town whether or not you end up with an impaired conviction. You're still going to take that chance.
Am I? Or maybe I'll leave you out in the woods. This is why we don't go on hunting trips.
Oh. Yet.
Yeah. No, of course I would drive you. And
Now, turd. I'm not going now. I assume you would.
hey, you thought wrong, Paul. Okay, speaking of drunk driving,
We have that case name from.
yes, it is called, Brazo, and it's, 2026 SKKB1.
So the defensive necessity still lives, and it's rarely run, and I'd like to see it run more often.
Yep. Now, there's also some new survey data about impaired driving in Canada that's been released.
Yes.
So this is from Ipsos, who were contracted by, and I think it's important to think about who hired them, Mad Canada. So
Yeah.
that. Yeah, apparently 93% of Canadians agree that impaired driving is a serious public safety issue. And of the people who agree that it's a serious public safety issue, 74% say that they strongly agree. You kind of wonder, like, who's the 7% of Canadians that are like, meh, impaired driving's fine. I want to know. I want those people to have
I probably they probably your number.
Mhm. Um,
Okay.
uh, there is a significant divide, though, among Canadians about whether the government is actually doing enough about it. So 48% of people think the government is sufficiently enforcing impaired driving laws. 42% disagree. So you actually have almost an even split across the country. About half of the people say, yeah, it's a serious public safety issue, but the government's got it under control.
80% of people think the government should mow their lawn and come into their house and take their garbage out. Like,
Can they?
wouldn't that be nice, right? Like, we get a lot of good government services out there, and this doesn't seem to matter what. Everybody's always got a complaint that it's not enough.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the city of Vancouver, they're perpetually like taking away services. Oh, we're only going to empty your garbage can every 2 weeks. We're only maybe we won't come this week. Maybe we'll come in a couple weeks from now.
So, you know that passive alcohol detection legislation that we've talked about before in the United States, where the vehicles are going to have passive alcohol monitoring by 2030?
That was under Joe Biden.
Yes. So 8 in 10 people, 80% of Canadians think that the government should, in Canada, pass the same law. Just government spy technology in your car.
Well, there's already so much. I mean, breath testers in cars is you can see the health concern, the safety concern. There's so many different issues there. It will all depend on the devil is in the details, right? It'll all depend on how they make it happen. But it seems to me that your car should be able to assess you. Can look at your eyes, can look whether your eyes are dropping down, can look whether you're, drooping, whatever. The Volkswagen, of course, the new Volkswagens, I've seen these ads over and over again. You fall asleep, it'll pull over and stop, which just makes me think, well, I'm just going to buy a Volkswagen so I can drive when I'm really tired. Um, rather than being alert and aware, I'm just going to drive when I'm tired and can barely stay awake because my Volkswagen will just pull over and let me have a nap.
I don't like I've said this before on the podcast. I don't like passive alcohol detection technology because you fill your car with a bunch of drunks that you're soberly driving home. It might not let you drive. And then that's the public safety issue.
You've had cars that have had coolant issues.
I
Yeah, if you have a coolant issue, your passive alcohol sensor is going to turn your car off every time because it's going to detect isopropanol and think it's alcohol.
In fact, I exclusively currently have cars that have coolant issues.
Oh, yeah, actually, even your classic car has a dripping radiator right now.
Yep.
Uh,
All I have
that's true. All your cars have coolant issues, so you would have problems. Well, see, there's a reason that I drive these old cars. And when I see old cars that fit within my realm of what I would be willing to drive, I usually just buy them and leave them behind the Richmond office because I don't want to have a car that's spying on me.
So, speaking of the alcohol detection technology in cars, there's also very strong support for mandatory interlocks. I think it's like 93% of people are agree that if you are convicted of impaired driving causing death, you should have to have an ignition interlock for life. Um, and I wonder why it's like impaired driving causing death specifically, because the only difference between impaired driving causing bodily harm and impaired driving causing death is usually that a person died, which I know is like a worse consequence externally, but the behavior that led up to the collision is the same. The same as a person going through a roadblock and getting detected there. Like it's the same risk. It just manifested differently.
You and I have both had clients who were charged with and occasionally convicted of impaired driving causing death. I've been doing this 26 years. Have you ever had somebody come back after a charge of impaired driving causing death, again charged with impaired driving? They all got their licenses back. No, I have never had that. You've had one, okay, but he didn't kill somebody the second time, or she. Yeah.
Nope.
So you're going to do this for the most remote of remote potential problems. I mean, unfortunately, MAD, we could have an entire podcast about MAD. MAD is the most affluent charity in the country. They collect more money than any other, and they have really nothing to spend it on except lobbying and, of course, the staff of MAD. They don't, what do they spend it on? Do they donate it to the Cancer Society? No. I mean, do they donate it to research for something? This is it. Like they pay for polls, and make some news and pay for the hotel rooms and the flights for mad people to go and speak to Parliament.
Well, yeah, and also, like, even in the polls, the questions they asked don't even get the law right. Like, there's one question they ask about, how many people are aware of the mandatory alcohol screening provisions. It's like 87% of Canadians are aware of it. Most people are in support of it. But then they asked, should there be similar provisions for boats? It's the same law. It's a conveyance. All conveyances and 89% of people, which is weird because more people support mandatory alcohol screening for driving than they support it for a personal vessel or a boat, which is only 89%, which is strange.
But they're just trying to stir up controversy. They're trying to make people. They're trying to mislead people, which we see all the time. And it's not like MAD understands what the law is.
No.
It would be useful if they had somebody there actually who understood the law explaining it, because when we've been to things where they're presenting, they've never explained the law correctly because they don't understand it.
Yep. Now, the other thing that shocked me out of this was they actually asked about IRPs. And apparently people were more supportive of IRPs when they were told that it allows law enforcement to immediately remove impaired drivers from the road, which can lead to a reduction in alcohol-related collisions and fatalities. So if you tell them a misleading statement about what an IRP actually is, then people are like, oh yeah, I'm really supportive of that. I too am supportive of immediately removing impaired drivers from the road so they don't cause an accident. I'm not supportive of sanctions associated with that are disproportionate and where you don't have a proper right of review and ability to challenge the evidence. But they didn't leave that part.
And give the world's crappiest evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mad Libs for police officers.
Huh.
But they also increased their support when they were told it takes less time than a criminal investigation. Yeah, just because it takes less time doesn't mean it's more quality, which allows them to
Much
remove.
less quality. I think it should be implied. They should have said that in there.
Yep.
Should the police be able to punish you with really, really bad evidence, a deficient review process?
And they also said that studies suggest the program results in reduced cases of impaired driving as the immediacy and certainty of consequences deters potential offenders.
Lie. That is a lie. It's a lie.
Statistically, that has not been borne out. It has not been shown. We did have a big reduction in impaired driving in 2020. So why don't we just have a pandemic or lockdown all the time? Because that reduces impaired driving.
We had a reduction maybe no, we didn't really in 2010. So we had up to the introduction of the IRP scheme in British Columbia, we had roughly around 7,500 impaired driving cases in BC every year. When the IRP scheme came out, it jumped up to 10 to 12,000 impaired driving cases. Now, obviously, you and I are both looking at it saying it's the police were out there madly issuing IRPs. And yes, it does take less time. And they set up a roadblock. They can hand out 3 of these things rather than 1. But there's been no decline in IRPs being issued of any significance over those years. In other words, it has not deterred anyone from drinking and driving. And if anything, it may have encouraged people because instead of having to, as you and I know, go face a judge, it's all done over the phone, and they're back on the bar stool the next day because they're not facing a criminal record. Their car's gone. They're not worried about changing their behavior
Yep.
because it's already happened. Most of the people who have to go to court think to themselves, oh shit, I've got a court date in 3 months. I better clean myself up. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to, and they're scared. And then they go face a judge, and the judge looks scary up there on the bench, in their funny little costume. And people are all freaked out, and they
Well,
change their ways.
it's not just that. It's also, if you hire a lawyer, if your lawyer's doing their job, they're going to tell you, clean your act up, quit drinking. Even if you don't think you have a drinking problem, go to counseling.
Yep.
Get hurt. I encourage all my clients to do these things. I send them a list of things that I want them to do. And the ones that do it and take it seriously, generally it works out for them. And
You're
the IRP
recidivists.
IRP process, right now, they take you off the road for 90 days, you pay your fines, and then at some point you get your referral to the responsible driver program, but it's so backlogged. People are getting them 6, 7, 8 months after their IRP.
And the thing is, with an IRP, you and I are not encouraging anybody to go take counseling because
Doesn't make a difference.
it doesn't matter. They're
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to tell them to go do something that's not going to affect their case. But if they've got a criminal case, and I want them to go and clean themselves up. So at least I can tell the prosecutor, you got these problems with your file. But on top of that, my client has done this and this and this and this and this. What else can we ask for in a justice system? We can't change the past, but we can try and change the future.
Yep, exactly. And, the IRP scheme doesn't care at all about, you taking the steps to rehabilitate and no longer posing a public safety risk and getting the appropriate message, which is, as you said, the deterrent that the court system does.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I don't see that at all. The certainty of getting caught is the only issue, but people don't consider that because it's not regular education.
yeah.
If they see roadblocks all the time, they will be worried about it. If they see people pulled over all the time, they will be worried about it. But when I moved to Vancouver back here in 1999, I saw people getting pulled over. I almost never see anybody get pulled over anymore. Like there's next to zero traffic enforcement. And you and I
In-
drive a lot.
In fact, Paul, it is there is so little of a perception by people that they will get pulled over and investigated for impaired driving that our ridiculous driver of the week is somebody who didn't perceive that risk when going to pick up their friend who had been pulled over and investigated for impaired driving.
Maybe they had enough to drink that they couldn't calculate the risk.
Yep. So there was a car accident this was in Vernon, British Columbia. So nice local story. Not serious car accident, nothing bad. The police show up, they issue an IRP, and then the driver calls the police, calls a friend to come give her a ride. And when the friend shows up for the ride, the friend also ends up with an IRP.
So they say that drinking's way down.
Yeah.
And I don't know that drinking is as down as people think. I know that U.S. alcohol companies are sitting on a lot of alcohol right now, probably largely because nobody wants to buy U.S. alcohol outside of the U.S. And I think people are hunkering down and saving their money. But there's still a significant portion of the population who are drinking and showing up to pick up their friend after having a few drinks. Yeah, that's a ridiculous driver. Like nice local BC one too.
Yep.
But they might be innocent, both of them.
They could be. So there you go.
Never know.
Well, that's our podcast. If you need to reach us related to a driving law issue, you can find us online at vancouvercriminallaw.com. or you can give us a call at 604-685-8889 and tune in next week for another exciting episode of Driving Law.